Alright, I'm going to make a video on an idea I have for a power station. I'm calling it the water reservoir power station, and the way it works is, let's say this is the surface of the earth here, and at certain depths in the earth there's in certain areas there's water reservoirs, and they're always at certain depths. Like, let's say this is the depth of the water reservoir if this was the surface up here, and they say some say it has to do with the buoyancy of water and how if it sinks through the ground, it gets lighter and lighter because gravity gets weaker and weaker as it sinks, and then it reaches a level where it just has neutral buoyancy and it just stops sinking, and the water just collects there, over the years. So there's like certain depths in the ground where there's just sections, like say like that, of just water. So in order to most people, they make a well shaft like this, from the surface all the way down into the water reservoir, and instead of pumping water out one single well shaft, I had the idea that you could use two well shafts, and instead of pumping water, the heavy water, out, you're going to use solar arrays on the surface, solar panels, that are all hooked together, so you're accumulating the positives and negatives together. So you have a very large positive and a very large negative. So the higher the DC voltage, basically, the better you want to get with this solar array. You don't want to have it just do a 12 volt charge for a big amount of wattage or something. You want high DC voltage for this. And what you do is you perform electrolysis down in the water reservoir. Let's say this is the positive over here, this is the negative over here. So you connect these two ends to each one of the shafts. So you perform electrolysis in the reservoir, but only in this safe zone right here. Not past the two ends of the well shafts, but in these areas right here. You would have your positive and negative electrodes, down in this area right here. So the bubbles that rise to the surface, the hydrogen and oxygen, that have each one of their own shafts here. Oxygen is going to go up one shaft, the hydrogen is going to go up the other. And you're going to use basically air compressor technology and air tanks, to store the energy, to store the gases for potential, storage energy later. Okay, and this is going to happen throughout the daylight hours. So throughout the entire daylight hours, you're performing electrolysis in the water reservoir, in the ground, making hydrogen and oxygen gases that you then pump up with air pumps up shafts into their own storage tanks. And then once the daylight hours are over and the electrolysis process can't be continued, then the solar array shuts down, and then the recombination of hydrogen and oxygen basically you unhook them from the shafts now, and you're hooking them up to a single tank. And what this single tank already has in it is a little bit of water in the tank already, a little bit of H2O already in the water, but kind of like this tank right here. This is a fire extinguisher, and the way it works is when it's out of water and out of pressure, is you pop open this top here. You fill it to a certain level with water, reseal it, and then there's another valve over here that you connect an air compressor, like a tire, like you see at gas stations, how they fill your air tire. You use an air compressor like that to fill air pressure into the tank, and then you can use the water as a fire extinguisher with some pressure behind it. But instead of using it as a fire extinguisher, what we're going to use is a little bit of water with the hydrogen and oxygen that we're putting in here, because we don't want the gases to be like one section of just hydrogen, a big bubble of hydrogen and a big bubble of oxygen. We want them mixed together, but we want to mix them together safely before we then release the energy. Like we're going to use this once it's mixed with the, we're going to kind of release it with something like a blowtorch fashion, where we heat up water to run a generator or turbine or whatever, however you want to use this potential energy now. Because once it's mixed and ready to be released, then it's ready, you're ready to burn, or you're ready to use the burning energy for some kind of, you know, power station of some sort. But anyway, the safest method I thought of to do the recombination of the gases, because you need to mix them and then you need to release them in a safe fashion, you know, a controllable, you know, way. So I thought that this would be the best way to do it, much like that tank down there. Is, you know, you just, instead of putting just air back into this tank as a fire extinguisher, you'd have two valves, or you could put hydrogen and oxygen gases into the tank at the same time, and once you reach its, you know, once it's full, or once these are empty, or whatever the situation is, then you just simply just kind of turn this tank upside down, and right side up you just kind of let the water fall back and forth so that the gases get mixed. I'm pretty sure that the H2O is not going to affect the H and the O that are in here, because they're technically all the same substance. They're all the same atoms. It's just these haven't been ignited yet. And when you release the gas to be ignited, then that's when you want to do it in the controlling fashion for your nighttime hours, when you want to use your stored energy that you gather during the daytime with your solar array. Okay, so that's my idea for the underground the reservoir power station anyway. And if I can think of any more details that I left out, I'll throw up another video explaining or putting them in the video too. But yeah, this is my second video now, because in my first one I didn't have this detail about how the stored gases need to be remixed and then used in a controlled way. So alright, there it is. Thank you for watching, and I'll see what else I can think of and get back to you soon.